You were all around the same age when you started out. And at the present time, Peter O'Toole and Albert Finney and Richard Burton are just a little older than you were when you started out. What do you think about the comparison between the two age groups?
I would think it's very much the same, really, except that, of course, the war broke, a lot of people's lives, and those young men have had a lot more experience of life, in a way, than we had, because they nearly all of them were in the war, one way or the other. And I think that probably it prevented them developing their technique quite so much as we did ours, but at the same time it gave them probably more knowledge a wider knowledge of life in general.
But the type of plays, which do you prefer, the type of plays that you were doing at that time or the type that they are doing now?
Oh, I haven't been in many modern plays, but at the time that I was a young man, I was in a play called Musical Chairs, which was very modern for its time, and The Vortex, and Olivier was in The Rats of Norway, and all sorts of Shaw plays, and we've all been at the Vic and at Stratford at different times, just as they have. I think that the training in England is pretty diverse, and anybody who's keen enough on the theatre has a pretty varied career and is able to have one if they aren't too much wooed by big money and the advantage of being a star too quickly, which comes more to the younger men today than it did to us because the movies and the television are such powerful media.
Which of the young men, as I mentioned before, do you admire the most?
Well, I admire them all. I think they're all fine. I think O'Toole is wonderful in Laurence, and I saw him give a very fine Shylock at Stratford 2 years ago. And I admire Schofield very much, who's playing Lear now, and who played the man for all seasons so beautifully. And Finney was very fine in Luther. I haven't seen him very often. Everything I've seen him do was... Oh, Billy Lai, he was brilliant. And Burton I admire enormously, but of course he hasn't done much the last few years. I'm sorry that he's left the theatre, because when he worked with me in The Ladies Not for Burning, he was so enormously full of promise. And then he went to the Vic and played Iago and Hamlet and Richard Henry V, and did extremely well. And I know he talked of coming back to the theatre to do Macbeth and Coriolanus, but I don't know whether his film people will ever let him out to do it.
2 seasons ago, you directed Big Fish, Little Fish in New York, and it was sort of a change for you working with some of the method actors like Jason Robards and Martin Gable. Could you tell us something about the work in that play?
Well, it was very fascinating. I got on extremely well with them. The play was in some way not quite right. It had 100 nights in New York, but it was a complete failure in England. I didn't direct it there, so I hope that I directed it perhaps better than it was done in London, I don't know. But it was a very interesting play. It wasn't very avant-garde. It was modern, of course, but it hadn't any particular originality of technique. It wasn't Brechtian or surrealist. And it seemed to me that it fell a little bit in some way between two stools. It was almost like the sort of play Van Druten used to write 15 years ago, only, of course, rather more strongly expressed. You know, we've all become so much more frank in our talk. All the actual dialogue was a good deal more pungent than Van Druten.
How did you like working with Robards?
Very much indeed. He's a most sensitive and brilliant actor. I think and I thought him very good in the films I've seen him in also. I haven't seen him in his present play, but I admire him very much.
And Martin Gable?
Well, yes, he gave a fine performance. It was a very effective part, and he played it beautifully, I thought. And I gather he's done mostly television for a good many years now, and so it was very nice to find that he was so effective in this part.
The other night, I saw you on television in an interview with Lister Sinclair, and you mentioned Charles Laughton. And I wonder if you could tell us something about Charles Laughton's early London career when he was playing American gangsters on
Well,
stage.
he played an awful lot of things. He was he was very good in French. And a woman called Alice Gachet, who was a teacher at the Academy of Dramatic Art, believed in him immensely. And he was one of the few English actors who's ever played in French at the Comédie Française. And Komisarjevsky, the Russian director who worked off-Broadway theatre, as you'd call it, found Charles, or saw him in a show at the RADA, the Academy of Dramatic Art, and gave him a job to play the part of the thief, Lilium, you know, the man who lies on the railway embankment, and also Epikodrov in the Cherry Orchard. And Charles made great successes in these parts. And then he went to the West End and did a play called Alibi by Agatha Christie, which was a thriller, in which he played...
That's where he played the American gangster?
No, he played a detective, a fat French detective, Hercule Poirot, who walked about in white slacks and a big hat and solved all the mysteries. And then he played the American gangster in Edgar Wallace's On the Spot. Tony Pirelli was one of the first sort of Al Capone characters, and he was marvelous in that. And then he did a low-life play called Payment Deferred, about a clerk who murdered a woman, and he came to America, and that was his first success on the New York stage.
I read one of your pictorial biography about you that was, you know the book I mean? With all your little clippings and everything. And it was said that Claude Rains was your teacher at the RADA.
I saw him the other day. I saw him at the first night of Laurence, in which he gives a beautiful performance, by the way. And I have kept in touch with him over the years. He wanted very much to play Sir Peter Teazle in this production.
He did.
But he sent me a wire about it, but we'd already cast it here. And he hasn't played in London for many years, but he did come back and do a benefit. We did a scene from Julius Caesar together. He played Casca and I played Cassius, and Godfrey Turl, who died a few years ago, played Brutus at a benefit in London 3 or 4 years ago.
What was he like as a teacher?
Oh, very, very dynamic and exciting. All the girls were in love with him, and he was very stimulating and exciting and terrific vitality. Oh, we were all mad about him. I imitated him dreadfully for many years.
In regards to Shakespeare, I'm going to name a number of main characters, and I wonder if you could tell me who you thought gave the best performances of each. Hamlet, who do you think was the best Hamlet you ever saw?
Well, I think Barrymore, really. He was one of the... You see, I had seen many others before him. I thought he was 45 or 46 when I saw him in London, but he was very moving, and he was poetic and at the same time very sardonic, which was so effective. He was funny, you know.
He sent you a telegram on your opening night in New York, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He was a very extraordinary man.
Macbeth?
Olivier, without doubt. He's the only good Macbeth I've ever seen.
He has never really done this in the films. I've heard he's tried to do
Well, he
it.
tried to get the money just after he played it at Stratford, and they wouldn't give him the money. It was very stupid that they didn't, because it was a marvellous performance.
King Lear?
Who have I seen? Well, lately Schofield, in the first 3 or 4 acts, I wasn't so happy with him in the last 2. But he was very fine in that.
Did you see Charles Laughton when he...
No, I didn't see Lawton.
Prospero in The Tempest.
Prospero is not a play I've seen very often. I've acted in it a good many times, and I love the part of Prospero, but I haven't ever seen it very well played from the front.
Brutus?
Oh, Brutus is usually a prig, and I haven't seen many good ones. I think we've had very dull Brutuses in almost every production I've ever seen.
You're acclaimed as quite the Cassius we saw you in.
Well, Cassius is so effective, but I've always thought that I ought really to try and play Brutus, but having enjoyed Cassius so much, I'd be rather frightened that it wouldn't come out so well. It isn't a very grateful part, Brutus, because he ought to be the hero, and he isn't. But he is the sort of first sketch for Hamlet and Macbeth.
What about Othello?
Well, Turl, I suppose. When I saw him as a young man, he was superb, Godfrey Turl. Robeson was not a success, in my opinion, and I was a great failure myself, and I tried to play it.
Yes, I read about that was last year that you...
Last year at
played
Stratford,
it.
yeah.
Romeo, what age do you think the person playing Romeo should be?
Oh, I don't think it matters. When Olivier played Romeo, he looked absolutely wonderful, and he played it beautifully too. He was then, I suppose, about 26 or 7. I played it when I was a boy of 19. If you've got a very, very marvellous-looking boy with a tremendous sense of theatre, I think you might get a success. But the difficulty with Romeo is that it isn't really a very good part. Juliet has all the best scenes and the best curtains, and Romeo has to come on and behave rather moodily and spitefully and shout about. And I think it's a very difficult part to succeed in.
Did you see the film with Leslie Howard?
Oh, it was no good at all, I thought.
And the recent one with Laurence?
That was also, I was in that. I played the chorus, and I thought that was terrible too.
How about Malvolio?
Malvolio is rather... I saw a very good performance by a French actor in that. His name was Poulain, I think, who directed it also with Suzanne Flon in a translation by Anouilh in Paris about a year and a half ago. Lovely production and a very good Malvolio, the best I've ever seen of it.
When you played it in the early 30s, you played him as a Quaker, didn't you?
Well, they say he's a Puritan. I tried to. I don't think I was very good in it. I think I was too haughty and sort of... it's very difficult with Malvolio because you have to make him somehow ridiculous and then sympathetic for a minute at the end, and it's very difficult to combine. I think it needs a man of rather a ridiculous nature. I mean, I think Lawton would have been a wonderful Malvolio. He never played it.
What do you think of Shakespeare as it's done in modern dress? Do you feel it should be done traditionally in the Elizabethan garb?
Well, as a rule, I think so, yes. I think that you can do it earlier than Shakespeare, but I hate it done in Carolean or Watteau or 19th century costume.
Paul Scofield did Coriolanus here at Stratford
yes.
2 seasons ago, and he did it in Napoleonic dress.
I think that's crazy, because I think it superimposes another period. I think that a play in modern dress has certain possibilities, but I'd much rather it was done almost like a rehearsal, without, with the properties, but perhaps not the costumes. There should be some simplification is good. But I think to smoke cigarettes and pour cocktails and bring revolvers out, all this to me destroys the effect. And I couldn't admire, as most people did, the Guthrie, Troilus and Cressida, which was done in 1914 German costumes. They were sort of Uhlans from the First War, and Helen was the Merry Widow, and I didn't think this worked at all, because I couldn't think why they were behaving so. It confused me in the meaning of the play, so.
Then what do you think of Joan Littlewood's theatre, in which she...
I'm very
tries-
impressed with it. I nearly went and worked there once. We got on rather well. She's a very strange woman. She's a very unusual and very original kind of woman. And the people who've worked for her, we have one of the actors from her company in this play, Howard Gurney, who plays Moses. And they have a great admiration for her, and it appears she's a terrific martinet. But she has some brilliant ideas, and I saw productions done for so little money, and with a tiny cast, about 12 or 15 people, most of them playing 2 and sometimes 3 parts without change of makeup, really. And they were very exciting productions.
Yet on that interview you gave on television last week, you said you didn't like Brecht's plays, and usually she tries to direct.
Well, she only did one, Mother Courage, which was a failure. But the ones that I saw of her, I saw Ebed II of Marlowe, which I thought she did very brilliantly. And I saw The Hostage, and I saw The Queer Fellow, and I saw Taste of Honey.
Do you like Bean's plays?
Well, I think they have a kind of Irish mad charm, yes. They're not quite so... Yes, I do. I think I like them better than O'Casey in a way. I only saw The Hostage and The Queer Fellow, and I thought they were both very rich and sort of exciting.
I read in the paper that Sir Laurence Olivier asked Peter Sellers to play King Lear this summer at
Yes,
Stratford.
Peter Sellers told me that. I think it is true.
What do you think of this?
Well, I don't think it's a very good idea. I don't think he'd last the course physically, the training in order to speak and to stay the course in one of those great classical parts. A man like Sellers, when he played in a run of a play in London, he couldn't stand it. He hates the theatre. He hates playing 8 times a week. And if you're used to doing little bits and pictures, however brilliantly, he is a most brilliant creature. I think he would be whacked after 2 scenes of King Lear if he tried to play it, unless he went into training for a good many months first.
What is your favorite part in Shakespeare?
Well, Richard II used to be, but now I'm too old for that. Richard II and Hamlet I used to love most, and now I'm, hope to play Prospero and King Lear again one day, and perhaps Angelo and Measure for Measure. The parts that I'm young enough to play, I'll go on playing, I hope. The fun of them is that you can go on playing them, many times in different revivals with different directors, and always find new colours and new ways to improve, one hopes.
Well, you like directing equally as much as you like acting.
Very much, yes.
So why not play the supporting characters, like in Hamlet, play the king?
Well, I've always thought I might play the king one day. I think perhaps I'd rather play the ghost. I think it's better, more up my street.
The films you made, your earliest one was The Good Companions.
Well, I made some silent ones before that, but nobody knows about them.
You did a film version of the life of Disraeli, the Prime Minister.
That's right.
You did Julius Caesar, and you were in Olivier's Richard III.
Yes.
What was it like making this film with all your
great fun. That was great fun indeed. But I made a disastrous remake of The Bandits of Wimpole Street, in which I tried to play Lawton's part and fell down very heavily.
Was this the one with Jennifer Jones?
Yes, it was awful, I thought.
What is your favorite film that you've appeared in?
Oh, Caesar, and it's the only good, sort of really successful film it's a film performance I've ever given. I longed to be in a film in which I have a modern part. I was nearly in Laurence, and I was nearly in The River Kwai, but things went wrong with them.
What part were you offered in Laurence?
Well, I was approached about Faisal, the part that Alec Guinness played, and I would love to have played it. But I wasn't free at the time they were going to make it, so I couldn't do it. But I would love to have done that. And I would love to have done they offered me Jack Hawkins' part in The River Kwai, which also would have been interesting to do. I would like to do something, nearer my own personality on the screen. It would be fun.
Next question. In the last couple of years in New York, there've been a lot of... So in London?
Yes, we run longer in London. We run 10 weeks with a failure sometimes, or 6 weeks, whereas they run 2 nights in New York. The expenses are not quite so great in London. Also, they usually take the theatre for a month, and so it's worth their while to keep it going,
Is the Mousetrap still running in London?
Yes.
How do you explain this, that it's run for 10 years
I don't know,
now?
I haven't seen it. It's a tiny theatre. And it was the first one. People just send their friends, I suppose.
Our main critic here has rapped the theatre as being too big for School for Scandal.
Well, it is much too big, but it's amazing to me how it holds and how the people respond to it. I especially after the Fisher Theatre in Detroit, where we were before this, which was held 1,000 people less. It seemed vast, and the play never seemed to get over at all. And here, every night, every point seems to come, and they laugh and seem to enjoy it enormously. And we've loved playing here, much to our surprise, because we all knew how huge it was.
The actresses that you like working best?
Well, I've been very lucky with the actors I've worked with. I have the greatest admiration for Edith Evans and Peggy Ashcroft. I've worked with both of them a great many times, and Miss Franken Davis.
The Cherry Orchard with
Yes.
Peggy Ashcroft.
Yes, and I directed it with Miss Franken Davis before. And Irina Worth and Pamela Brown and Diana Wynyard and who else? Sybil Thorndike.
With Claire Bloom.
Claire Bloom, I only acted with her a couple of times.
Have you seen the three Stratfords, the one in Canada, United
I've
States?
seen the Stratford one, but I haven't seen a performance there. And I haven't seen a performance at Stratford, Connecticut. I've seen the theatres, but not a performance.
Wondering in 1967 will be Canada's centennial, and they were wondering if you might be coming to Stratford. Have you ever thought of coming to our Stratford?
I haven't thought of 1967 yet. It's far too far. I might be in my bath chair by then.
Have you ever been approached?
Yes, they've approached me many times, both Ontario and Connecticut. But I can't bring myself to start again a sort of pioneering job on this side of the ocean. I've done such a lot of it in England, and I feel the time has come to pick and choose. It's a great responsibility to run a season, especially with actors you don't know. You've got to trust other people in the casting and try and find a policy. And I've done most of the plays that I want to direct. I don't want to repeat things that I've done before and try and copy the old productions.
Have you been to the Actors Studio in New York?
Mm-hmm. Last time I was there, I went and rather enjoyed it. I think it's interesting, and it's nice that actors who are working can go and, get some sort of practice and rub ideas with one another and get criticism from Strasbourg, who's rather a shrewd critic, I think.
In regards to Chekhov, one must get inside the character. Do you find any similarity in the way that you approach one of Chekhov's characters and the way they study at the Actors Studio?
Not really. I think one takes all characters like in the same way, in the way of trying to get inside the character. But the difficulty is how you present it. It's like different kinds of technique for different...
For instance, how would you approach the character of Gaev in The Cherry Orchard?
Oh, I don't know. One just sort of instinctively finds a way to marry it up with your own personality and what you observe. I copied my father very much in it because he had some of the qualities of Gaev, some of the charm and some of the eccentricity also.
You said on the broadcast also that you disliked Shaw's preachings.
Yes?
Please stop. Well, we're discussing on the broadcast, you mentioned you disliked Shaw's preachings in his play. And yet, Don Juan in Hell, the sequence out of Man and Superman, which is mostly all preaching of his beliefs, has been done successfully, just that part itself on road companies. What do you think of this?
Well, I think that Shaw always writes beautiful English, and all of his plays are worth speaking. I've never been very mad about them because I think he limits the actors very much. If you learn to speak and phrase his parts properly, they're not tremendously interesting creations as characters. Higgins is rather an amusing part, and Caesar is rather an amusing part in Caesar and Cleopatra. There's some good parts in St. Joan. I've never found that I have a burning ambition to play any of Shaw's parts, except when I was a young man. I did enjoy playing Marchbanks in Candida, and also Dubedat in The Doctor's Dilemma, but these were romantic parts which he wrote for Granville Barker when he was friends with him, and I think they have a particularly attractive quality which a young romantic actor can enjoy very much. Some of the character parts are very nice to play. Doolittle's a marvellous part, and The Doctor's and The Doctor's Dilemma, but the plays are a little bit, to me, a bit long-winded now.
What do you think of My Fair Lady?
Well, I loved it. I would love to have played Higgins. I think it's a marvellous part. But I don't know that I would have wanted to do it for a year and a half. Now, there was one talk at one time that Harrison mightn't come to England in it, and they did talk to me a little bit about doing it. I spent a day with the composers trying to see if I could sing. But it's a marvellous part. I mean, everybody's made success who's touched it, but he was particularly brilliant in it.
Have you ever done any musicals?
No, I directed a couple of operas. In fact, the Beggar's Opera and then 2 grand operas at Covent Garden in London.
What do you think of stage image? Some actors like Michael Redgrave and Alec Guinness, nobody really knows what they're like because they're always playing different characters, yet some people are always associated. Like Jason Robards came along recently, and he was a new find, yet lately he's always cast as the bitter recluse.
Well, the difficulty is that they always try and type you if they get half a chance. Alec Guinness is an eccentric comedian, and Lawton the same. After 10 or 15 years, you rather run through however versatile you are, the danger is that you run through the gamut of the most effective different things you're able to do. And if you aren't very careful, they'll put you back again into the same sort of part because they think the public wants to see you in the sort of part that you're associated with. And that's what I think rather made Lawton's career less interesting in the late years, because he was repeating his Captain Bligh and his Milton Barrett. He hadn't got anything more in the locker. And as you get older, you aren't so inventive and you aren't so strikingly new. And the danger is that people will suddenly get sick of you, although they have encouraged you to do the thing that you do best and to be more or less the same in a number of parts.
What actor do you think has come out the most unscathed, that can play almost any part?
I suppose Olivier, but he has his critics, you know. He's had more world success, I suppose, than any of us, because he's had in so many different fields. Come on, this is very long.
What's the matter?
Well, you can do all that.
What roles, particularly in modern British drama, would you like to tackle in the next few years? Any following playwrights, stop me if there's any, like Arden,
Never seen anything about this.
Wesker,
Don't admire him very much.
Pinter,
Pinter, yes, he's a very good writer.
Simpson.
No, not at all at my street. Because I only saw one of his plays and I never smiled at it.
What do you feel is the ideal relationship between the theatre and the state? In England?
Oh, I never discussed that. It's far too
Not at all?
complicated.
Oh. How far is the director justified in imposing his own conception of an overall style and character interpretation upon the actors?
Well, it depends what actors he's got. I think he has to have an idea about the play, and then he probably casts it himself and knows rather the kind of performances he hopes and expects to get, so that he rather conceives it in the way that it will go well with the actors. Otherwise, he shouldn't do the play. And that's why I'm frightened of going to a foreign country and taking on a cast that's been already selected without my knowledge, so that I don't really know their capabilities, and therefore find it waste an awful lot of time trying to discover what they really do best.
Can we get round to Richard of Bordeaux now?
Yeah.
For the benefit of the cast. What do you think is the essential theme of Richard of Bordeaux?
I don't know, I can remember nothing about it anymore. It's so long ago. Well, it's just a picture of the man's history. It's practically the same as Shakespeare, and it's got humour and colloquial language. If you know the Shakespeare play, you know the main lines of the action, and they follow the same lines in the play, except that you do see him earlier as a very rather affectionate, pacifistic young man, and not quite, rather spoilt, but not so tyrannical or domineering as he is in Shakespeare, and with much easier things to say without all those long poetic speeches which can hamper your... I mean, the Shakespeare part is a much more noble, magnificent part, but as a play I think it's a very difficult and heavy play unless it's marvellously done. Whereas Bordeaux is a drama and a melodrama practically, with light scenes, and it can be acted lightly with a good deal of comedy. There's no comedy in Shakespeare's play at all. But by giving Richard a sense of humour, she immediately makes him so much more sympathetic.
Two of the main supporting characters have asked me to ask you questions about their character. One of them is the Duke of Lancaster, who finds that he can't seem to get any character.
Well, it was it's a rather mysterious character, I think. Because Gaunt was rather a mysterious character. The only thing is to realise that it isn't the kind of great thundering oak tree that he is in Shakespeare. He seems to be sort of rather benevolent, sort of guardian who tries to manage things between him and Bolingbroke and sees the danger coming and is rather tactful and rather arrives at the right moment and is very courtly with the other uncles who are a bit coarse and crude, and Lancaster's a courtier and a sort of elegant figure.
With Gloucester is wondering about the humour in his role. Should he play...
well, we made them rather like Tweedledum and Tweedledee, the uncles.
Arundel and Gloucester?
Yes, they were nudging each other and shoving each other up the bench and shouting about like... They were a bit caricatured, but I had very good actors for them, big, very great burly men who were very amusing. But Gloucester is much more vindictive. Arundel's just a bit of a fool, a bit of sort of rather well-meaning oaf, whereas Gloucester is really a powerful and rather frightening sort of, like Goering or something.
And what about Anne?
Well, Anne is an enchanting girl, and Miss Rankin Davis made an extraordinary thing of it, because it's a tiny part, as you know, but of course she was awfully well served by the author. She had very short scenes, but they all tell very well, and her entrances and exits are very well placed, and when we were directing the play, we put in things for her which made them much more effective, just little touches which she was able to be very appealing in.
I want to finish this off soon. I'd like to mention some of the some of the actors in England, and any capsule comment you'd like to give on them, any the best parts you may have seen them in, or anything like that. If you could give it for us, please. Sir Ralph Richardson.
Oh, I hate criticizing my villains.
Well, I don't.
No.
How about the best part
I worked
you've
with
seen
him. I worked with him in The Heiress and in The Day by the Sea and in this. We had old friends, and he was wonderful in the old days at the Vic when he played Ena Barbas and Kent and Bottom. He gave the best performances in those three parts that I've ever seen anybody give. And since then, a number of other wonderful performances. Falstaff, particularly, too.
Sir Laurence Olivier?
I haven't worked with him much. I did direct him in Malvolio, which he was very clever, but I thought not altogether successful. And I've always admired his Richard III tremendously, and also the, so many things he's done in films and theatre.
Michael Redgrave?
I haven't worked with him for some years now. I think he's brilliant, particularly in character comedy and things like Uncle Harry and in Aguchick and Twelfth Night, and those kind of things in which he plays a kind of. He was wonderful in the production of Three Sisters I did just before the war, in which he played the Baron Tusenbach.
Alec Guinness?
Alec was the best fool in Lear I've ever seen with Olivier. And he played a very interesting Hamlet before the war in Modern Dress. And he was fine the other day in Ross. He hasn't worked in the theatre much the last few years. But I loved him in many, of course, in his comedy roles in films, and Man in the White Suit, and the other one. I forget what it's called, about the stealing the money.
Lavender Hill Mob.
Lavender Hill Mob, yes.
And finally, an actor who has not been appearing in Shakespeare recently is Cedric Hardwicke.
Well, he's not done very, very interesting things in the last few years. He used to be wonderful before the war. He was wonderful in Christopher Bean and a number of short parts. I saw him as Shotover and as in the Back to Methuselah and many short things. But he hasn't played in London, except he came back and played at the Vic without much success. He was rather unhappy in that season. And I didn't see many of his New York performances in Antigone and those things.
Who are your favorites among the American actors?
Geraldine Page, I love. Julia Harris, I admire very much. Robards. Of course, I haven't seen an awful lot of people, because when I'm in America, I'm usually playing myself, and I don't go to the theatre very often. George Grizzard, I think, is very clever. He's going to play Hamlet at Minneapolis.
What do you think, by the way, what do you think about the Minneapolis repertory? Is this a step forward for American theatre?
Oh, I don't know what it's. I haven't been there, and I don't know the city, I don't know the theatre, so I wouldn't like to say. Hume Cronin is actually a beautiful actor, yes, and I acted with her a great deal in London before she came to America. She played Cordelia and Miranda in plays with me.
To conclude now, is there any special passage from Shakespeare that is your favorite?
No, I've been making a recording of 57 sonnets, and I need to do another 50 when I get back to New York. That's quite enough to go on with. No, I mean, one doesn't have favorite. I've done so much of it in different things.
Is there any part in Shakespeare that you have not played yet that you would like to play?
Well, I rather like the part of the old king in Henry IV, but it isn't a very exciting part. I rather would do it if Richardson would play Falstaff again. I would do it. I don't think he wants to play Falstaff again, so probably I shan't. I might play Brutus one day. I don't know.